Good afternoon, wonderful scholars of theory of knowledge. I am going to be doing a screencast for you to walk you through the today's events, perhaps Wednesday as well. So the goal for you today is to take a real-life situation, any real-life situation, and extrapolate to the various issues, areas of knowledge, ways of knowing, considerations, and then choosing one of those aspects, you're going to create some knowledge questions, from fairly poor knowledge questions all the way up to excellent, strong knowledge questions. And if there's time today, you will watch a 15-minute video of the way to prepare for your presentation, kind of a roadmap, or it may be a better idea to do that on Wednesday. So here we go. I began with your selections of real-life situations. So this is from last week. This is period 3. Here are all of the real-life situations that you put in. And I scanned through and looked at some of them, and I've chosen this one here that Zara selected for us, which is the Russia's Olympic membership was fully reinstated after further testing showed that there were no more doping violations. So I clicked on it. Had a look at the article over here, and as it reads through, it's not a very long article, so you may wish to read it. At the end of the Pyeongchang Games in February, the Russian team had their membership reinstated, and this was after a lot of controversy over 2 athletes, one of whom was a bobsledder, the other one was a curler who tested positive for doping. So they essentially, I think they negated the membership of the whole team. Very disappointing, as you can imagine, being an Olympic athlete, only to have all of your 4 years of preparation or beyond taken away. So this is an article saying that the Russian team had their membership reinstated. So thank you, Zara, for that. So I've gone over here to creating a mind map for you. You have a few documents there, a few handouts that Ms. Kramer will provide for you that are various shapes of mind mapping and brainstorming, different permutations and shapes. You can use any of those, or you can create some of your own on a blank piece of paper. So the first thing that you will do is create at the center of your web or your mind map your real-life situation. So here it is here, the Russian Olympic membership, Russian team had their membership reinstated. The first level of your mind mapping are the different areas of interest that you can extrapolate from that real-life situation. So here we have the health aspects of, and these were provided for us by Zara. So we have the drug use, rules and regulation of sporting events, ethics, health, athletics, technology, international relationships. Very nice collection of ideas and issues. So phase 1 is kind of the next, if you think about it as the Google Earth that I talk about. So here we are in our classroom looking at this real life situation, and now we've gone to the next level up where we're looking at, let's say, Cleveland High School and Google Earth, and we have these different areas. So we have the health aspects. This might be natural sciences. What are the aspects, the health aspects of athletics and doping? You don't even have to go into the doping aspects. What are the physiological aspects of being an Olympic athlete competing at that level? Here we have international politics. The idea of our international relationship certainly plays into the Olympics. We have member states around the world that we consider allies, and we have member states, some of whom compete in the Olympics. This year was particularly interesting with North Korea and South Korea presenting some teams that call it the Unified Korea. So you might choose to extrapolate from the Olympics themselves into international politics and go from there. And then we have the technology, the technological aspects of how we're able to detect doping, how our ability to test blood, or actually I don't know how they do it. So you might go into the technology of how do you test athletes. Are you looking at hair samples? Is it blood? Is it saliva? What are you testing for? There's of course, going back to the natural sciences, could become some of the chemistry of that. So the technology of doping and athletics. We have another area about Olympic athletes in general. So I've extrapolated to the next level with a few of these, but let me go around the circle first. So at this first level are the areas of interest that we can extrapolate that may be different from one another. Certainly they're all connected. And then we've got the idea of doping and drug use. So I extrapolated from this one into the ethical considerations. What are the ethical considerations of doping and drug use amongst athletes? Do we want to consider doping just for amateur athletes? Because Olympians are meant to be amateurs as opposed to professionals. We have the ethical considerations of medical interventions. I mean, some athletes get blood transfusions, which is actually fully legal, but it may elevate the oxygen levels in their blood, allowing them a certain advantage. What about medical procedures to make you slightly stronger in certain areas? So there's the ethical considerations of sports and competitions in general. And then we have the physical health issues or the natural sciences associated with doping and drug use that we kind of talked about over here. What constitutes medical intervention versus health improvement? What are the negative consequences of doping and physiology? If I recall, when in the 1980s and 90s, particularly with weightlifting and power Olympic lifting, a lot of steroid use, which at that time wasn't widely known about. A lot of people were doing it, and then people had some consequences called roid rage, where almost like PTSD, people would go into terrible bouts of anger and commit crimes because of the doping that they were doing. One of the areas that we could look at are the rules of sporting competition. So we have the Olympics that we start with, and then the Russian membership. Who creates the rules? Who decides the rules of international play? When do those things change? Over the history of the Olympics, when did the idea of athletic and medical interventions become part of the rules? Was that always part of the rules of sporting competitions for the Olympics? The rules, and this was something that I thought about regarding swimming. So what happens when our technology allows us to create clothing that gives one athlete an advantage over another? I don't know if you watched any of the Summer Olympics a few years back, but swimmers are now not wearing, or they're wearing, I should say, swimsuits that look like super thin scuba gear, which is allowing them, and it's kind of silicon based, so it's allowing them to slip through the water that much faster, giving them sometimes 1/100th of a second of an advantage, which in some of these competitions can mean you come in first, second, or third, or you qualify. So here is extrapolating to that level from this area of course, beginning with our real life situation. Going back over here to the idea of Olympic athletes and amateur versus professional. So we've got history involved with the Olympics itself. When did it begin? I know it began in Greece, but I don't know how many centuries ago. The idea of the Olympics was for athletes to compete on a level playing field internationally, and the idea is that they're amateur athletes. However, now it is almost impossible to be an amateur athlete and compete at an international level because you have to essentially make it your job. So what are the ethical considerations of paying athletes? So once you've done your mind map and really drilled into the various areas of interest, areas of knowledge, ways of knowing that are associated with these, ways of knowing we can add to this, like rules of competition regarding an international competition. What about the language associated with translations? How do some rules translate into other languages, and what if the nuances are lost in that? So this is where you're really breaking down one real-life situation and exploding it into a bunch of different areas of interest and knowledge. The next phase will be to create knowledge questions. So phase one, mind map, and I really recommend that you do this with more than one real life situation. So going backwards, don't forget you've got 2 class periods. So by all means, check out your own as well as the other class periods. There's just a host of really excellent examples to choose from. So you've done at least one mind map, if not more than one. And now you're going to create and extract a knowledge question from this real life situation, depending on which direction you want to go in, depending on what you want to focus on for your presentation. There is another handout, and it's called the AISG ToK Guide to Extracting a Good Knowledge Question. One of the sides of that has some examples, example 1, 2, and 3. They list the real life situation and then extract knowledge questions from it. The reverse side of that piece of paper is for you to do it with 3 real life situations. So I decided to go, sorry, I'm clicking all over the place. I decided to go in this direction. The idea of paying what are considered or meant to be considered amateur athletes. So a knowledge question. Remember, a knowledge question cannot be answered or should not be able to be answered with a yes or a no. So this is not a knowledge question. How much does an athlete have to earn to be considered a professional? It is not a knowledge question. A weak knowledge question related to this real life situation, and again, I'm focusing on the idea of money in amateur athletics. Should sponsorship payments be banned for Olympic athletes? And what makes that, if I were with you, and you might actually pause at the moment to talk amongst yourselves. If you choose to do that, just pause the video. What makes this weak? And then what could make it stronger? Okay, so we're moving on to a good knowledge question. It's not great, but it's good. To what extent can amateur athletes be competitive without paid sponsorship? I'm not so sure that I like the phrasing of it, but what my presentation would be investigating would be to what extent is it possible to compete at an international level and not have some type of external sponsorship or patronage. And then a stronger knowledge question, or here's a couple of them, but going in different directions. What are the ethical considerations of paid sponsorship for Olympic athletes? So we've got the area of knowledge of ethics. We've got we can show how we extrapolated from the real life situation, and we're certainly going to be discussing what it means to be sponsored and the competitiveness of it. And then a knowledge question going in a different direction, what are the economic considerations of professional athletes? So then we look at athlete, or you could also choose amateur athletics. You could look at, is there really such a thing as amateur athletics anymore? And what are the economic considerations of that? So there is your task for the day. Begin, please, with a real life situation. Head to your mind map. Do some mind mapping, and you can choose whatever format and visualization of it you like, whatever works for you, and then extrapolate, please, to knowledge questions. I very much hope to see you on Wednesday. I will keep you posted of what's going on. Have fun and enjoy the process. And by all means, help each other and work together.